The jungle wakes before the sun in the eastern Congo basin. Wet heat fogs every lens and turns breath into mist that eats sound. A joint special operations task force moves through that weight of air, with the Navy SEAL element set as the assault team and the United States Army providing a thin strand of overwatch that must see first and speak cleaner than the storm. Staff Sergeant Erin Walker lies hidden where the ground rises into a termite mound. She is an Army Special Operations enabler, an 11 Bravo soldier with sniper qualification, tasked to hold precision overwatch under strict rules of engagement and confirmed positive identification. She lives by deconflict fires, keeps her reports short, and accepts that respect is earned only when the chaos starts paying attention. Chief Petty Officer Mark Rivera has labeled her extra weight in more ways than one, a judgment that lingers on the net even without a word. Walker answers with silence, then checks her pace plan in sequence: primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, and rechecks radio discipline against the time hack. Rain freckles her optic and beads on her hands as she builds a hide that feels like a small cathedral of patience. Edge is broken, signature low, mind steady on the work. The air goes tight around the team like a spring about to break, and the green silence waits to decide who remembered the rules and who did not. Before sunrise, the eastern Congo basin feels like a vault of wet air. The canopy crowds low and turns every path into a tunnel of leaves. Mud sucks at boots and hides roots that can take a man down in one step. Moisture films optics and softens engine noise, footsteps, and breath until the jungle seems to swallow sound whole. A joint special operations task force moves inside that green pressure with a clear chain of command. The ground force commander owns the plan and the timeline, and keeps the nets disciplined. The Navy SEAL element is the assault team at the front, managed at team level by Chief Petty Officer Mark Rivera. Staff Sergeant Erin Walker is the United States Army Overwatch, an 11 Bravo soldier with sniper qualification assigned as a special operations enabler to protect the exfil route. The rules are strict because the ground is tight and civilians live near the river trails. Rules of engagement require positive identification before a shot, even when the canopy narrows the view to a heartbeat. Reporting follows contact or SPOTREP formats built on salute, which means size, activity, location, unit or uniform, time, and equipment. Words are few and chosen to cut through static without adding confusion. Communication is planned with pace, so nothing rides on a single radio. PRC 163 is the primary, PRC 152 the alternate. SATCOM, the contingency when the trees turn hostile, and IR strobes or hand signals serve as the emergency layer. Under the canopy, every angle demands deconflict fires before release, because friendlies can share the same compass line with threats. Overwatch keeps a small footprint, values precision over volume, and lets patience carry the weight. The real risks grow from terrain and nerves more than from numbers. Overlapping grids can drift when satellites fight leaves and storm clouds. Dead ground offers safety until a belt-fed weapon builds a beaten zone that locks movement in place for an L-shaped ambush. The green silence waits to reward the careful and punish the careless. And patience becomes Erin Walker's way to live through what comes next. The mission brief gathers in a damp canvas tent where lantern glow sticks to fog. The Joint Special Operations Task Force lays out roles with simple clarity, so no one wonders who owns what when the jungle starts to press. The ground force commander holds overall control and sets the timeline, the scheme of maneuver, and the standard for discipline on the nets. At the point is the Navy SEAL assault element managed at team level by Chief Petty Officer Mark Rivera, while Staff Sergeant Erin Walker of the United States Army serves as overwatch for the exfil route. A laminated map shows a thin river trail and several choke points where canopy and terrain force bodies to compress. The exfil lane threads past a bend that invites an L-shaped ambush, with likely gun positions marked by pencil shadows on higher ground. The rules are tight because they must be, with rules of engagement that require positive identification before any shot breaks the air. Everyone is reminded that patience is not a suggestion, but a survival skill when visibility and sound both work against you. Communication and reporting are framed to cut through static without creating more of it. Contact, or SPOTREP traffic, follows the salute mnemonic that means size, activity, location, unit or uniform, time, and equipment. Brevity is agreed ahead of time, so words like hold, send, shift left 0.4, and PID confirmed carry the same meaning across the task force. Walker notes the call priorities and keeps her voice for when it matters. The PACE plan is rehearsed until it feels automatic. PRC 163 serves as primary. PRC 152 stands as alternate. SATCOM carries contingency. And IR strobe, or hand signals, provide the emergency layer when radios fail under leaves and rain. Rivera views Walker as extra weight at the edge of his assault focus, a judgment left to hang unchallenged. She answers by running a time hack sync, validating crypto fill and frequencies, and confirming deconflict fires with the assault lane so corridors stay clean. Her kit is simple because the jungle punishes excess. She carries an M110A1 with suppressor and optic, a dope card strapped to a wrist coach, and an M17 as a sidearm. A Kestrel gives her the air picture, while a laser rangefinder and a light thermal help to find targets before they exist as threats. Radio discipline and restraint are the through line. And by the end of the brief, the air feels like a spring wound tight and ready to decide if order can outlast noise. She finds the termite mound, where the ground lifts above the wet and the roots run like ribs. From there, she studies fields of fire from 280 to 310 degrees, and draws the lines in her head until they feel real. She checks for dead space and sees where a careless step would vanish from view. She marks likely PKM positions on higher knobs that cover the trail if an L-shaped ambush snaps shut. She builds a rain cover that is dark, dull, and quiet to the touch. Fresh leaves break the edges so the shape looks like nothing the eye wants to hold. She positions the muzzle to keep blast buried and sets a small screen to catch ejection so brass falls soft. The hide is small enough to breathe and large enough to work, which is the only balance that survives a wet morning. Her range sketch grows from true terrain instead of guesswork. A split trunk at the river bend becomes a reference, as does a hanging vine at knee height and a stump with pale bark. She checks the dope card strapped to her wrist coach against readings from the Kestrel and notes the heavy air that slows everything. The laser rangefinder gives distance to each marker, so holds will not be a debate later. She inspects the optic for fog and the suppressor for a clean mount on the M110A1. The M17 rides safe and tucked where it will not print or pull. She dry fires to test trigger control until the press feels like a thought, then lets the safety click settle the last bit of shake. The sound is small and certain and reminds her that the rifle is semi-automatic and built for restraint. She runs a short comms check that touches each step of the PACE plan. PRC 163 is primary. PRC 152 is alternate. SATCOM is contingency. And IR strobe, or hand signals, stand as the emergency layer. Brevity terms are simple and shared, so hold, send, shift left, 0.4, and PID confirmed will mean the same thing for every call sign. When the net is quiet again, she leaves it alone and returns to the work of staying unseen. Nothing about the hide asks for attention. No loose fabric snaps. No glass flashes. No stray line cuts across a natural curve. Her body lies behind broken edges and shadow, so even birds do not change pattern as they pass. The mound feels like a small cathedral of patience. And inside it, her mind settles on control and readiness, while the jungle waits for the first mistake. Static breaks and knits itself under the trees like torn cloth. The squelch comes in short bursts that fade as the canopy leans closer, then returns as a thin hiss that pricks the nerves. Erin steadies herself with a simple cycle of breath. Slow inhale. Brief hold. Long exhale. Quiet hold. The rhythm settles her pulse until the jungle noise becomes background instead of threat. A sharp memory flashes in pieces. A night when someone guessed without a clear picture and a good man did not make it home. She lets the image pass without grabbing it, then anchors to rules that never change in wet air. No shot without positive identification. No voice on the net unless it adds value. No friction that makes hard things harder. Contact traffic or a spotrep will ride the salute frame. Size. Activity. Location. Unit or uniform. Time. And equipment. And nothing extra. She reads the risk coach and touches each line with one finger. Direction. Distance. Target. Elevation. Action. The kestrel gives her humidity and a hint of wind drift along the river bend. Useful later, but not a reason to act now. She times her breath with the far hiss of the net so that her mind and the radio share one tempo. The urge to fill the silence slides away and leaves only the checklist and the map in her head. The canopy deadens voices until they blur. Then the blur itself becomes a metronome. Erin listens for the beats that matter and lets the rest fall into the mud with the leeches and the roots. Panic wants her attention but gets nothing. Because attention is fuel, and fuel is for the moment that saves lives. By the time the net spikes again, she has turned noise into pattern and is ready to step in at the first clean opening. Mist hangs low along the river trail and turns shapes into smudges. The Navy SEAL assault element moves in a slow file. Weight on the edges of their feet. Rifles held tight to keep branches quiet. The ground force commander owns the clock and the route, holding the larger picture while the team closes in. A quick surge. A controlled grip. And the target is secured with hands bound and posture checked for hidden blades. Safety checks follow in silence that feels drilled and lived. The team sweeps for second men, scans belts and pockets, and draws a thin perimeter that does not stir the brush. A low glow from a covered chem light marks an internal rally point that reads to friendlies and to no one else. The lead signals the turn toward the approved exfil lane and the formation breathes as one. Up on the mound. Staff Sergeant Erin Walker tracks bodies by shape and motion, not by guess. She pushes a short spotrep framed by salute. Size confirmed as a small group with one detainee. Activity shifting to exfil. Location keyed to the river bend, and a split trunk. Unit or uniform recorded as local militia patterns. Time noted in natural speech. And equipment limited to small arms. Her words are brief and clean. Then, the net goes quiet again. Deconflict fires stays in her head like a guardrail while she watches the assault lane. The jungle gives small warnings that belong to people who listen. Birds go quiet along one edge. And leaf noise slides off rhythm as if something heavy paused where it should have flowed. Walker logs friendly positions against terrain marks and holds her fire because positive identification drives every decision. The team turns for the way out and the air tightens the way it does before an ambush. But the posture stays calm and the process stays right. The first burst tears the morning in half. A PKM opens with 7.62 by 54 rimmed and shreds leaves into wet confetti. An RPG-7 gunner shifts for a firing lane while the line of trees throws his outline into and out of focus. The Navy SEAL assault element drops into dead ground on reflex because the beaten zone is hot and hungry. One man takes a glancing hit and crawls behind a root that rises like a rib. Movement stalls as the belt keeps the trail pinned and branches jump with every sweep. The air smells like damp soil and metal. And the canopy presses sound back onto the team. Breathing gets short because time feels thinner than bark. Up on the mound, Staff Sergeant Aaron Walker works through rules that will not bend. No shot without positive identification, and no words on the net that do not help. She reads the chaos and watches an enemy team leader use hand signals to move guns. Then freezes when foliage closes. She holds fire because a guess is not a standard. Her report rides the net in a clean slice that follows salute. Size is squad plus. Activity is L-shaped ambush. Location is along 280 to 290 degrees, with reference to the split trunk and the river bend. Unit or uniform shows militia patterns mixed with old field gear. Time is called in simple speech as the moment it is. Equipment lists PKM and RPG-7 with small arms in support. Overlapping grids stack under the canopy and make distances argue with each other. Angles that look open from one position cross with friendly lines from another. So, deconflict fires stays front of mind. Walker uses brevity agreed in the brief and states that she will hold until PID is clear on key targets. The net cracks and hisses and then pulls quiet as her restraint sets the tone. She tracks the leader, the PKM gunner, and the RPG-7 gunner as they trade places in the green. She reads the pattern and times the slight lulls that open when people breathe. The left edge of the beaten zone lifts when the belt team resets, and the assault element tenses for a bound that cannot start yet. Walker settles on control of the rhythm and prepares to cut into the beat with precision when the next window opens. The window opens in the green for a heartbeat. Aaron ranges the leader at 420 meters with the laser and reads the humid wind along the bend. Her dope card says, hold 0.6, left for this distance and air. The M110A1 rests steady, with the suppressor keeping signature small and the world presses in. Positive identification comes through a brief seam of leaves where movement and pattern align. She eases the breath down to stillness and lets the trigger break like a clean thought. The shot is single and disciplined, and the jungle pauses as if it heard a rule being spoken. She feels the recoil settle back into the mound, and nothing else moves that does not need to. Her update rides the net as a short spotrep under salute standards. Size reads as Squad Plus, with one leader down. Activity shifts to disruption of the L shape and enemy reorientation. Location ties to the split trunk and river bend with headings between 280 and 290. And time is given in simple speech for the present moment, while equipment lists PKM and RPG-7. She keeps deconflict fires in front of every choice, because friendly lines and enemy angles are near the same compass. The PKM team resets, and she hears the rhythm loosen at the edge of the beaten zone. She times her next intent with the bound that the assault element wants to make, and keeps brevity for clarity using on your move and hold and send when the lane is safe. She does not ask for marks because marks under Canopy can cost more than they give. Radio chatter thins as restraint sets the tone and order replaces the first rush. The silence that returns is not empty anymore, but measured like steps on a narrow bridge. Respect begins to gather in the way the net waits for her cadence and then moves when the air is clear. One controlled shot has turned noise into timing and timing into space to breathe. Aaron settles back into the hide and lets the new rhythm lead her eyes. Each target is judged by threat and proof and not by pressure. Each message is small enough to carry and strong enough to hold. Every clean shot from here is another door open toward daylight. The PKM owns the trail until Aaron breaks its spine. She tracks the gunner through a gap where bark peels and sees the assistant gunner feeding the belt from a half-cover crouch. The assault element coils to move, and she waits for that shared breath right before bodies lift. The M110A1 rests steady. Suppressor tight. And a controlled pair rides the trigger into the gunner as the belt line dips. The belt droop comes a beat later and shows the hand that keeps it alive. Aaron sends a follow-up into the assistant gunner before the feed can recover and feels the beaten zone loosen like a knot slipped free. She holds deconflict fires in front of every choice because the assault lane runs close to enemy angles and mistakes grow fast under leaves. Brevity keeps the picture clean, with simple cues like moving, hold, and send, while she reminds the team to stay west of 280 to avoid crossfire. Silence returns in a measured way that carries meaning instead of fear. Aaron holds fire after the cut to keep a low signature, and to let movement speak first. A short spotrep follows salute, and states that enemy firepower is degraded. Positions around the split trunk are shifting, and near-term safe ground exists for a bound of 10 to 20 meters along the dead ground. She adds that friendly posture should stay low and keyed to terrain marks because isolated bursts may chase their exit. The air opens like a window, and the formation slides forward in a single, careful pull. Breathing slows across the net as adrenaline drains just enough to leave control behind. Aaron repeats the safe heading and resets her checklist, so the next lift of the rhythm will find her ready. One precise cut has traded noise for space, and turned a narrow trail into a thin corridor of survivability. He shows up where the trail thins, and the trees make a narrow sightline. The RPG's 7-gunner paces a step at a time, and searches for a clean firing lane that would rake the exfil route. Aaron tracks the tube, the posture, and the way his shoulders turn to test angles. She notes the danger behind him because the backblast would give him away if he sent a round. And she files that detail under chances that will not be needed. She ranges him at 310 meters and writes the number into her breathing. The Kestrel tells her the air is wet and slow. And the dope card on her wrist coach gives the hold she needs to make a first round count. The M110A1 settles into the hide with the suppressor ready to keep her signature small. She waits for the moment when the Navy SEAL element coils to bound, so her shot will buy time instead of noise. Radio discipline stays tight because talking is not the same as helping. Deconflict fires sits in the front of her mind, since friendly lines and enemy lanes share more than one compass heading under the canopy. Her spotrep rides the salute frame and stays brief. With size, activity, location, uniform pattern, time spoken in plain words, and equipment that includes the RPG tube with small arms around it. Brevity terms are ready and simple, so, on your move. Hold. And send carry weight without filling the net. The seam appears as the gunner commits his stance to the lane. Aaron presses the trigger in the same rhythm as her breath, and the round lands clean before the rocket ever meets the tube. She scans and only engages threats that could hit the next bound. And she lets distance targets slide, because chasing shots turns control into luck. The northwest corridor opens like a door that was always there. And her follow-up report confirms a safe pull for the next rush. Across the net comes quiet acknowledgement that the Overwatch is drawing the exit for the team. No speech needed. Only movement that proves it. The kill zone falls behind in pieces as the formation slips into the exfil lane. Aaron shifts her sector to cover the rear and shapes her body to the mound until shadow eats the edges. She checks friendlies by the faint pulse of IR strobes where Canopy allows and confirms identifiers against the terrain sketch. Deconflict fires stays in front of every choice, so friendly lines never cross the angle she intends to hold. Reporting comes in short pulses that follow salute and keep everyone on the same page. Size trends smaller as enemy movement thins. And activity shows sporadic bursts with no coordination. Location is tied to the split trunk, the pale stump, and the river bend in plain terms. While time is spoken as it happens, so no one counts the wrong minute. Equipment reads as scattered small arms and one quieted position with no belt fed in play. A single shape inches for a flank along the low ground where vines hang heavy. Aaron waits for positive identification. Confirms, by the way. His eyes track the friendlies, and by the way, a bandolier rides his shoulder. One clean shot stops the threat that could touch the next bound. Then she holds fire, so signature stays small and movement keeps the advantage. The net breathes easier because the decision was narrow and proven. Close air support is not called because clouds sit on the treetops, and the rules of engagement do not change for weather. The plan favors a low signature pull toward the patrol base, where medical support stands ready. Erin peels from the hide, only after the last man clears the danger, and the terrain finally masks the formation. She keeps rear security until the river noise swallows footsteps. Then lets her breath follow the team rhythm, down from a sprint to a walk. The route out feels solid, and the lesson is as steady as the heartbeat she guarded. Discipline holds the line until the very end. The patrol base breathes like a tired animal in the rain. Canvas sweats and lantern light floats in the damp while gear clinks in small, honest sounds. Chief Petty Officer Mark Rivera gathers the element and gives a clear, professional acknowledgement of the work that kept people alive. And he does it without flourish. Staff Sergeant Erin Walker accepts it as a fact of duty. A quiet nod to the standard she carries rather than to her name. The after-action review follows the book, so no lesson leaks away. The team walks the contact timeline, in order, from first burst to final peel, noting where the exfil lane narrowed, and where the dead ground saved seconds. They review spot rep traffic built on salute, confirm that deconflict fires held at every decision point, and record that no fratricide occurred under the canopy. Rules of engagement are checked against each shot, and the board shows that positive identification drove every trigger press and every radio call. Notes settle into neat boxes because clean habits survive bad weather. Radio discipline gets tagged as a strength, with a reminder to keep brevity words common across all call signs, so timing stays tight. The team writes down how a single controlled shot opened space for a bound, and how waiting one breath longer closed a door on a threat. Rain beads on the dope card strapped to Walker's wrist coach. Yet every number stays readable, which feels like a small symbol for decisions that did not blur. The base gets quieter as the last points hit the board, and the clock moves toward 2:30 p.m. People move to rest plans and maintenance while the ground finds its level again. Walker cleans her optic, logs her rounds, and leaves the case by the door with simple pride. If you want a breakdown of disciplined Overwatch and the salute framework in the next video, drop the word salute so we can build it for you.